Welcome to the Overlooked Motel, a place where underseen and unappreciated films are given their moment in the spotlight. This week I'm looking back on a tragically underseen offering from the late great Tobe Hooper. Toolbox Murders has the rare distinction of existing as a remake that dramatically improves upon the original. In this case, that isn't terribly hard to do, seeing as how the 1978 film The Toolbox Murders is a complete mess. It is tonally imbalanced and painfully paced. What starts as a slasher-esque exploitation flick devolves into a Lifetime movie of the week during the second act, and it never recovers. Thankfully, this update shares very little in common with the film it's reimagining. Toolbox Murders is a brutal effort that deftly melds slasher tropes and supernatural horror. The film sees Nell, played by Angela Bettis, and her husband, Stephen, played by Brent Rome, move into an historic apartment building in Hollywood. In the plus column, the rent is reasonable and the complex has a doorman. In the minus column, the building is dilapidated and the fellow residents have a strange habit of turning up dead. When Stephen and Nell move into their new building, they encounter their new neighbors, most of whom are more than a little unusual. That serves to heighten the sense of isolation they feel, particularly Nell. Stephen is a resident at a nearby hospital and doesn't spend much time on the premises, but Nell is an unemployed teacher and lives nearly every waking moment in her new home. The notion that she is without an ally makes Nell appear even more vulnerable to the evils that surround her new dwelling. The late Tobe Hooper does a commendable job building atmosphere with this underappreciated effort. His camera work creates a sense of unease, and the film's gritty tone and grimy color palette serve to compound that sensation. The film has an overall feel to it that recalls the bleak tone of the original, but tells a story that is dramatically different from its predecessor. Hooper manages to subvert expectations early and often with Toolbox Murders. At the onset, he introduces something of a decoy protagonist only to shift gears and reveal the identity of the actual protagonist shortly thereafter. Also noteworthy is the way the flick seems to set itself up as a straightforward slasher, but as the narrative unfolds, we begin to see that there is more than just a run-of-the-mill maniac with a toolbox at work here. While the string of murders depicted in the film are executed in the slasher style, the narrative weaves in elements of supernatural horror, and that's something we don't see a lot of, which is unfortunate because the genre melding proves quite effective. Aside from claustrophobic camera work, eerie atmosphere, and the gritty tone, much of what works about Toolbox Murders can be attributed to the picture's screenwriting team Jace Anderson and Adam Girash. The duo also penned the script for Hooper's 2005 film Mortuary. Anderson and Girash have had their fair share of misses, Mother of Tears for instance, but they really found their stride with Toolbox Murders. The narrative is imaginative and often unpredictable. Moreover, the third act takes the audience on a surreal and unexpected trip that feels ever so slightly reminiscent of the thematic elements explored in the third act of Dario Argento's Inferno. However, I will leave it there for anyone that has yet to experience either film. Toolbox Murders is a bit rough around the edges at times. It was certainly made inexpensively, but if you can get past that, the flick delivers epic kill scenes and a twisty narrative that's likely to keep you guessing. Ultimately, Toolbox Murders is a solid effort that should be celebrated along with Hooper's better-known cinematic offerings. That's all for this installment. We'll see you next week back here on the Overlooked Motel.